Hello everyone, so this is my last planned video on the bipolar series and depression series, and it's about how to interact with psychiatrists as a patient. Because for me, I've discovered that my distrust in psychiatrists is not unique. Everybody that I've talked to about how I felt about psychiatrists has said that they also felt that way at one time. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who don't trust psychiatrists, okay? And don't trust psychiatry and don't trust the drugs. So this video is for those people. How do you get to a place where you have a healthy relationship with your psychiatrist? That's what this video is about. It's not about abandoning psychiatry. It's about how to benefit from it. Okay, so what's the main problem with interacting with psychiatrists? Well, the very common phenomenon that I've experienced myself and that I've really heard from other mentally ill people is you never want to tell your psychiatrist how bad you're really feeling because they'll give you some super hardcore drug that you'll be on for the rest of your life. Okay, that's just what they'll do. If you say I am obsessed with suicidal thoughts, they'll give you something very, very strong with a lot of side effects. And so I would not, I would downplay things to my psychiatrist and say things like, you know, I'm a little depressed, or I'm not quite normal, or I'm, you know, down, or I'm having obsessive thoughts. Don't say about what, but I'm having obsessive thoughts. And I was afraid to be put on very powerful drugs. What can happen with psychiatrists, in my experience, is they will prescribe and prescribe and prescribe. Every single time you talk to a psychiatrist, you end up with a new prescription, it seems like, unless you say everything's going swimmingly. And that can make you reserved with them. So, how do you deal with that? Well, you have to realize, guys, that you can say no to your psychiatrist. That's the main thing you need to realize, and you need to empower yourself to say no to your psychiatrist by doing research on what they prescribe you. And I don't mean Google research, I mean peer reviewed journal research on the drugs, like Google Scholar and things like that. You don't have to spend hours. You just have to get a general feel for what the medication is, what it's going to do for you, what its side effects are, and what its efficacy is. So, I'll go through what happened to me with my depression phase before I decided to come to residential treatment. I finally told my psychiatrist about how bad I was feeling, about how deep into depression I was. And I had already decided to go to residential care, but they told me to go to residential care and that I needed to. And then he mentioned to me, my psychiatrist mentioned to me, treatments for depression, brand new ones, and then also like that rapid eye movement stuff. He didn't just load me up with hardcore drug prescriptions like I expect psychiatrists to do and like psychiatrists have done to me before. So I was able to be honest with my psychiatrist, and things were okay. Now, when I first got to this facility, I told them how bad I was doing. And the psychiatrist here, a new psychiatrist, wanted to put me on lithium because apparently it's the gold standard for dealing with bipolar disorder and regulating mood. And I was like, yeah, here we go. This is why I'm not honest with psychiatrists, because if you're honest with them, you're going to end up on hardcore shit where you need to draw your blood all the time. You need to worry about your organs getting damaged. You need to worry about all these side effects and toxicity and all that. And you don't even know if it's going to work. What if it just makes you feel really weird and fucked up? So I didn't want to just be loaded up on drug after drug after drug. But I didn't want to say no outright because it might frustrate the psychiatrist. So I told him I would think about it and that I would research lithium and that I would let him know next week if I want to go on it. And then I did just that. I really considered whether or not I should go on lithium, and ultimately I decided not to. And you can do that. They can't force you. So basically, I said, respectfully, I decline. I don't think that the downsides are worth the upsides, even though I'm very depressed. So we need to, are there any other options? And in psychiatry, there's almost always other options, in my experience. So what they did instead, he said, okay, you're worried about extra side effects and being on too many medications at once. So why don't we go more aggressive with the medications you're already on? So basically, he upped all my doses of the medications I'm already on, which is Abilify and Lamictal for mood stabilization. And now I'm on a fuck ton of Abilify. A lot of Abilify. I'm taking almost a max dosage of Abilify for a bipolar person. And what do you know? I feel better. My mood's stable. It worked. That plus the therapy. The medication is only, according to my psychiatrists, the medication is about 30% of the problem. If you're trying to solve the problem of your bipolar, the medication is going to be about 30% of it, and the other 70% is going to be personal effort, cognitive behavioral therapy, stuff like that. So if the medication doesn't magically fix your life, that doesn't mean it's not doing anything. I feel like the medication at least makes it possible for you to get your damn moods out of the way and not be so overcome by them. So with Abilify, I haven't recognized any side effects. I've been on Lamictal since I was 18, so I don't even know what life is like without it. And I don't even know what side effects I have because I've been taking it for 13 years. But with Abilify, I haven't really Since I upped my dose, I haven't really noticed any differences other than just feeling better. And remember too that with psychiatry, every medicine affects different people in different ways. Some people do utterly horrible on Abilify. One time I was prescribed Seroquel and it was the worst experience of my life. Not literally, but it was the worst experience I've ever had with a brand new drug. It altered my perception of reality in a way that I really, really, really didn't like. So I threw all the pills away and I told my psychiatrist I wasn't going to take Seroquel anymore. Other people really like Seroquel. People with ADHD react completely differently to Seroquel than I do. So, some people even get addicted to Seroquel, which is like, I can't imagine because I hated it. Other people hate Abilify, it makes them feel awful. So, you do have to try things in psychiatry. If you feel like, oh, I don't want to be changing up my meds all the time, well, you do have to get things dialed in and try different medications if they're not working. The best thing I ever did with psychiatry that I'm really thankful for is I told one of my older psychiatrists like 6 years ago, I told him about my panic disorder and my anxiety. And he put me on an SSRI, Zoloft, that I still take. What does Zoloft do for me? It took away my fucking panic attacks. I've only had a couple since I started it and they were manageable. My panic attacks used to be so utterly insane that I would go to the emergency room all the time and go to the fire department all the time and call 911 sometimes and take an ambulance to the hospital because I thought that I was having a heart attack and dying because it felt that way. Um, Panic attacks are horrible. And I told my psychiatrist about it, and he made the decision to put me on an SSRI even though I'm bipolar. Why is that so surprising? Because SSRIs can cause mania in a bipolar person. But instead of just saying, you're bipolar, you can't have an SSRI, he said, well, if the panic attacks are leading you to be even more disabled than the bipolar because you can't even leave your house, then we should try the SSRI with something that prevents mania. And that's when he put me on Abilify. So I was put on Abilify and an SSRI at the same time. One to regulate the mood and prevent mania, and then one to fix the anxiety and the panic attacks. So, thank you to that psychiatrist for taking the chance on me to give a bipolar person an SSRI, even though it's risky, because there's nothing I'm more thankful for than to not have those panic attacks because it's utter hell. In a lot of ways, it's even worse than depression because you always feel absolutely horrible. You feel like you're dying and you're always afraid of the next panic attack and you're never at peace. You're never at rest. You always think you have to go to the hospital. And it's also generalized anxiety too. So I was an extreme hypochondriac. I always thought something was horribly wrong with my body. I would get all kinds of scans and all kinds of tests thinking that for sure something was wrong, and I had physical symptoms because your mind will manifest physical symptoms. It's crazy. Like things would hurt, like my chest would hurt, and I would feel the symptoms of a heart attack, like tight squeezing in the chest, pain in the left arm, because I would read about the symptoms and become so paranoid and afraid of them that they would actually happen. And it was just my brain doing it, but that was impossible to believe that nothing was wrong. I'm getting off track here. Fuck. Ugh, I'm at 15 minutes and I've been rambling about. The point of that story was I told my psychiatrist what was really happening, and I tried the new drugs and it worked. And then here, I told my psychiatrist what was happening. They prescribed me lithium. I said no. And then they upped the dose of Abilify and Lamictal instead, and it worked. And I bet you lithium would have worked too. It's just that the side effects are much more brutal. It's very hard on your body. But I'm sure lithium would have regulated my mood. If it's that much better than Abilify, then it must work. So I don't doubt that it's the gold standard. But for me personally, I wanted to make sure that lesser medications with better side effects didn't work before I just went to the most intense one. And I feel fine with this Abilify and Lamictal. And Zoloft. But Zoloft doesn't help with bipolar. Zoloft is for anxiety. An SSRI doesn't help you with bipolar because it'll make you manic. Or it's at high risk of making you manic. In fact, it's quite common for people, the way they find out if you're bipolar is an SSRI making you manic, and then they diagnose you with bipolar instead of depression. So you go to the psychiatrist for depression, they give you an SSRI, and then you become manic, and then they diagnose you with bipolar, they take the SSRI away, and they put you on mood stabilizers instead of antidepressants. And that can be not as strong against depression as an antidepressant. Like, Abilify is classified as an abnormal antipsychotic, I believe. It's not as tailored to cure depression. So, I would recommend, number one, being honest with your psychiatrist, but number two, being willing to say no to medications. Because it is my opinion that psychiatrists have a tendency to put you on too many medications at once. I'm sorry, psychiatrist. I know that I'm ignorant and I don't know much about the field, but I really do feel like if I never said no to anything, I'd be on like 12 different pills by now. Because every appointment, it's, oh, let's try this, let's try that. And they give more than they take away. Maybe that's not every psychiatrist, but it's all but one of the psychiatrists I've ever had. So they have a propensity to load you up on meds. A lot of them. If you constantly tell them that you don't feel good. So, just tell them that. I just told this new psychiatrist that. I didn't have as much of a filter. I was like, look, I don't want to end up with 8 pill bottles. Because, then it's just a cocktail and you don't even know what's going on. So that's when he was like, okay, so let's up the doses of what you're taking now so that you don't add new medications, you just add higher doses. So a good psychiatrist will address your concerns and work with you. They won't just tell you that you're wrong. I had one psychiatrist that would just be like, well, you're wrong. You need to take this, you need to take that. And I didn't really connect well with that psychiatrist because as bad as my mood is, I do still care about my physical body and physical side effects. I don't want to have no sex drive. I don't want to be overweight. That would just make me more depressed if I was overweight. So, you know, there's things like that where you don't want to have 8 different side effects. And I think that if you are doom and gloom with a psychiatrist, they will decide that the side effects are worth it for you. It'll be like, yeah, you might gain weight, but it'll help your suicidal ideation. So you have to just say, well, I'm concerned about the weight gain. I don't want the weight gain. It's something that I really am against. And there has to be another drug that can help without making me fat. And there usually is. So just tell them what's bothering you. You have to work with your psychiatrist, and if they're assholes about it, then you should try to find a new one. If they don't respect you, you should try to find a new one. So, as long as your psychiatrist respects your concerns, then you can respect your psychiatrist's decisions. So, yeah, I would recommend not doing what I did and downplaying everything to your psychiatrist. A lot of people do that. From my anecdotal evidence, a lot of mentally ill people do that. So, you know, especially guys, because the medicine's only 30% of the work, and I wasn't doing the other 70%. The therapy, the effort, the belief that you can get better, the decision to seek care. I wasn't doing any of that. I was only taking meds. So, how much were meds really going to fix me? More and more and more and more meds without any therapy or any effort to improve. Just taking a pill. There's no pill that can do that. They are assistants. So, by relying only on a psychiatrist, you're only taking 30% of the pie. It might be 50%, it might even be 70%, but you're not going to get to your end goal just with pills. So that's why, you know, if you tell your psychiatrist, hey, I'm sad, and they give you a new med, but you don't do anything else other than take that med, the med might be doing something for you, but you're still going to be messed up. So you're going to go back to your psychiatrist and say, I'm still sad. And then they're going to give you something else. When, if you put in the other work, maybe you could get better on your own and you wouldn't need all the increase, the cocktail. So I kind of had like an over reliance where medicine was the only thing I was doing. And so my psychiatrist, I feel like, could have done a better job of explaining that to me, that I can't only take meds and that I needed therapy. The psychiatrist here explained that to me, but my old psychiatrist never really explained that to me. It was kind of like, well, okay, if you feel this way, take this instead of do this. Try eating healthy, try exercising, try socializing. My other previous psychiatrist didn't really say that. It was just try this med. We're at 25 minutes. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I hope that I stuck to the point of stand up for yourself, be firm, do research, but be straightforward and honest with your psychiatrist just like you would other doctors. I think that that's kind of like a fair, balanced assessment. I'm not telling you to downplay to your psychiatrist. I'm not telling you to lie to your psychiatrist, and I'm certainly not telling you to be afraid of psychiatrists. They're trying to help you. And if you have bipolar disorder, you need some kind of medication. Otherwise, you're just going to be. So. So, yeah, that's pretty much like the psychiatry video. Um, they've been doing it a long time. They have a lot of different options with medications. So, if you go to a psychiatrist and it doesn't work out the first time, there's almost always some other drug they can try. Like, I've never tried Wellbutrin. Maybe it would be great for me, but I'm afraid of the weight gain. Um, but you can end up on meds for too long because can't. The psychiatrist isn't experiencing the side effects and the downsides. So, for example, with Zyprexa, the hardcore antipsychotic they put me on to bring down my manic phase, I stayed on it for like 7 months until I started getting bad side effects from taking it for too long. And I told my psychiatrist, am I supposed to stay on this antipsychotic for the rest of my life? And then they were like, no, let's take you off it and see if you go manic. And I didn't. So I took the Zyprexa a lot longer than I had to. But I had to bring it up. My psychiatrist, it seemed like, was just going to let me take it forever until my brain got permanently altered by the antipsychotic. So you have to speak up for yourself. Because the psychiatrist is blind to how much it's affecting you. But especially the heavy antipsychotics, you have to look up the effects of long-term use. Long-term use. So now I keep some Zyprexa so that if I do have a manic phase, I can kill it immediately. So it's almost like an as-needed antipsychotic now for me. I don't just take it to take it. Alright, cool. I'll stop here. If another video is necessary, I'll make one. But that is psychiatry from the perspective of the patient. Alright, thank you.